Someone has to do these races, sure. No, I was here yesterday. It's good. I walked down with this. It was pleasant compared to yesterday. I got the whatnot area, so I'm okay first.
Big guy, little guy, one of the bolts around under the machine, trying to lift the machine up on the table. The machine, I figured out this I called my brother on the out that way. So I picked it up, and I started to put up the ground, and all of a sudden the children
You can feel it too.
Oh yeah, instantly. And I'm like, don't grab it. Put it down. I would take it over to his arm. And I'm going to go back, right? And I started getting nauseous. I started getting into it. And it was punching in his back. It initially felt here, and then it went to where your shoulder blade. So, yeah. So I've been kind of like isolating it, trying to take care of that way. And trying to take care of it that way. And then about 2 days later, it's manageable. I don't want to and yeah, someone was stretching a little bit. I woke up yesterday. They don't have
Cascade failure. Much like Verizon.
I looked at my wife, I'm like, hey, did you punch me?
Yeah, I did something similar the other on that one. We're putting that off balance. So, I'm moving this slide, I'm bugging sliding weight. I should start slipping down and make it
Yeah.
Twisted it and hopped it.
Yeah.
And then later on, we was putting it in the water. That is like, it's still a little bit about the, like, I know it's something.
Well, that's why I got a piano. I used to be a college, after that, a couple years ago. Yes. This is a kickball. Yeah, not so much.
You don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, for sure.
How is that? Well,
this is John. He's in charge of our audio visual communications.
Well, it's actually, I think expect you to be on call. It's good. That's not bad.
Are you going to use your laptop today?
I'm not going to use my laptop.
Okay.
Yeah.
got
Very strong and safe.
Hey, Sean, you did right.
You're up. He's kind of doing some bad. He also is,
77. Sure. Yeah. Walking around. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Different professors, right? Yeah. Okay. And he's
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I see that.
Jason,
Good,
good, how are you?
I haven't seen you since professional.
That week?
Sorry, just keep it for now.
Hey, Chris, is he in this city in person by the end?
Yeah, that's what someone saw on the season. I didn't know it was
I don't know, he asked me if she agreed. Okay.
Well, separate, kind of separate entities, right? But you still support, right?
Our support is
I have, technical ops admin and office supports the entire facility team.
And then
You might.
You might have been in the-
You're here, but you also have
just slides. These departments have not. These departments need more methods.
I'm not sure.
Be able to do all that?
Yeah, just the bit of update is
Bad.
classic, EG.
Yeah.
So it's that halfway from the accreditation. Now it's coming, they do like a semi-audit. Yeah. Rules of, selecting changed a little, so the way she described it, too much choices. I understood what she was saying.
I would have thought like, yeah, I think the electors are more. I think the
I
electors are.
Well, luckily you're here now. That's right, it's coming up.
Oh, to my, yeah. That would be more, yeah, that was, yes.
Yeah, I would think naturally the electors would be more kind of busy for purpose of picking up.
So,
As long as you've got that.
so essentially, what they wanted to avoid to happen is, so you have to have a general education here, our site. And you go, and you do like sociality, you want your sociality one, and then English something. there'd be something different. That was my, yes, yes. So they didn't want students to double tag in the same.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
That might be more like, that's for scheduling.
Well, I think it's, we want people more.
Yeah,
We want people to like, dabble. We want you to philosophy pencils. We don't want you to do double pencils.
yeah.
I would, is what I, my take on it. But
Yeah,
again,
I had enough
that's-
money left.
Yeah.
Happy, all happy. That's your process. Scott?
Yeah.
Last week. Then every day I kept looking at it. Now it's.
Well, look at the business thing.
Yes.
Is there some extra classes? Everyone's track all the time. I just want to ask.
Well, that was less than one.
Yeah.
I want to make sure.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna say everybody comes from. From their city.
He was so happy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Wesley knows. Did he wasn't sure he wanted. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Brian will use that.
brought you right in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just while we're sitting here, for those of you that have showed up that haven't signed in up front, either because the paperwork wasn't there when you came in, or just because you walked by without knowing, if you're interested in just getting some sort of certificate of attendance or proof that you're here kind of thing, or something for your faculty, just sign it either now or on your way out, and we'll take care of it. If you don't sign it, we don't know, right?
Nevertheless, was somehow discussion board lead up to their twice and I think late. Sorry.
No, you have, it's actually.
There's like one at the very start of the semester, and then one in 2 weeks or oh crap, 2 weeks or so anyway, so I can
tell you where.
all the I'm trying to
Yeah. Yeah, so we, this week.
Are you, just so you know,
I don't know exactly what it's all about. No, suits out of that.
That's a fed.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what it's called. So, pick it up. I was hoping to go to space. Yeah, it was across the board, so there's great. Yeah, it would have been at the end. 3 years. They just yeah, so this is something we're looking at.
year?
Yes.
You got the institutional.
I was.
Okay, great. Awesome. Let's get started in a few more minutes.
It's fine. Oh, yeah, we're. Sarah.
Do you want January, January, or again, the best? And then, Norwood, you want to hear about that? The delegated.
Yeah.
And Norwood, pretty much say that's the delegate. Very nice.
Excellent, yeah.
So I started working
Yeah.
on Friday.
I've been there before, but it's not on my.
I was at the same more. Pretty much, yeah, high. So.
Okay, we'll get started this afternoon. I expect a few more people. We had 47 registrants here. We are streaming live on YouTube, so just keep that in mind for any comments or questions. If you don't want to record it in perpetuity, be careful on what you say and how you say it here today. I want to thank John Reynolds in the back from STIC for supporting us with this endeavor. I want to introduce just a few people here real quick. We have some professors from STIC over here, Professor Alves and Professor Candido, both highly intelligent and swift and eloquent speakers on cybersecurity, cyber coding, Python, and all sorts of infrastructure stuff. So if anybody has any questions, they're excellent resources here. We have our CISO for Springfield Technical Community College, Sean Pettis, over here. So if you have any questions about how anything's run at the school, I'm sure he can tell you what he can tell you. And what he can't, he'll give you some guidance. Along with that, we have some great speakers here today. I'll introduce in a second. So if anybody has any questions about the center, we do have these pamphlets on the table on the wall behind me. Feel free to grab these on your way in, way out, or just visit us at springfieldcce.org. And that will tell you all about what's happening, tell you about the events we have. If you go to the website, down the very bottom in the footer, you'll see the words free events. So we host 2 events a month. The next one is a cybersecurity meetup, which is a very informal conversation. It's usually 2 or 3 lightning talks, 15, 20-minute presentations, very informal. And then we host some networking and social hours there, just to give people a presence and a community to build off of here. In my experience in the past decade or so, we'll leave it at that, most of the cybersecurity meetups I've been to or have been available to me are out in Cambridge, the other end of the state, a little bit difficult to get to. So we thought we'd start hosting them here for the Western Mass audience. So, anybody in the area, Hartford, up through Vermont and up to the Berkshires in New York are welcome to attend here at those meetups. The next one, February 3rd from 5 o'clock to 7:15 in the evening. our next conference like this will be at the end of February. Post that shortly on that website, who the speakers will be and what the content or topics will be about. But today we have two lovely speakers, one from the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, talking about identity theft prevention, and the other is from Amazon Web Services, Executive Advisor. They'll be talking about zero trust. We have a great lineup today. I just want to share with you some basic logistics before we move forward, and that is, if there's an emergency of some sort, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen. We have 2 restaurants here in the building. The smoke alarms tend to go off because they're cooking bread or something like that. If we need to evacuate, there's the door you came in up front, and depending on where the issue is, there's a set of frosted doors right here to the side of me, just outside the conference room, wrap around to the right. Those lead out to Dwight Street. If you have to go out to Dwight Street, try to go underneath the bridge. It's a little better protection from the weather, and it gets you away from the building. If you go out the front door, just to the left of the security booth, there's a set of doors that lead you out to Frank B. Murray. If you go out that way, go across the street to the fence line, and we'll meet up over there until we're allowed back in. Restrooms, as you came in, you passed a desk. Past that desk to the left is a hallway. Ladies and men's room is down there to your left. Feel free to use those anytime you need to. Our kitchenette is through this door. There's a door that leads down a little hallway. There is water, soda, and some snacks out that way on the kitchen. Feel free to grab those at any time on your way out, whatever. We hope we can help you stay informed and stay comfortable today. It's a nice day, especially in here. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me at any time. And if you don't mind, Professor Candido, would you mind saying a few words about our facilities?
I'll front for the
Please.
Thank you, Gene. So I'm Professor Brian Candido. I'm the Department Chair of Computer Information Technology at STCC. With me is Professor Jason Ells, who helps us in the cybersecurity realm. We have 2 majors. We have the coding major, but we're going to really talk about the cybersecurity because that's what we're here about. So we have a certificate which you can earn, or you can start there and then continue into the degree and come out with an associate's. We have some basic coding classes, operating system networking. We have a series of security classes that will help you prepare you for the industry. We have partnerships with the Mass Green High Performance Computing Center, MGPHCC for short. They tend to hire some of our students as interns. Mass Mutual, which we have one of our students who worked there as an intern, he's here with us today. So it is actually really a beginning to end program. You could start with free community college for 2 classes a semester or more. And we give credit for industry certs, and the Tech Foundry we partnered with as well. And we have a pathway from the Tech Foundry into STCC. And if you complete the degree, you can actually continue. So a lot of places are like, oh, I get a job or I go back to school. We have an and where you can actually get the career and you can transfer to Helms or any other school. So at blcandido@stcc.edu if you have any questions. And thank you.
Thank you, sir. So my next duty today is to introduce you to Ms. Robin Putnam. Ms. Putnam is from the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation. I've known her for a few years. She is always out and about helping people understand how to prevent identity theft and a lot of other topics around safe and secure business matters, both professionally and personally. Ms. Putnam.
Got a lot of technology on me, 1 second. Sorry. Is everything okay? Can you hear me, crowd? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Gene, for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I don't get to Central or Western Mass too often. It can be a challenging drive, especially in the winter, but luckily it's not Sunday right now. As Gene mentioned, I am with the Office of Consumer Affairs, and I have been with the Commonwealth for 11, almost 12 years. I give presentations on identity theft all over. I have probably been to about 98% of the cities and towns in Massachusetts. A big part of my job is community outreach, and I really like to do these kinds of programs because it's much more interesting than sitting behind the desk all day long. I did leave a handout, just some privacy tips, as well as some RFID blocking shields for credit cards. I start these programs out, stop talking a lot about phones because we all have phones. Pretty much anybody who has a pulse has a phone. Our kids have more phones and gadgets than anybody else. But, you know, the phones and fraud is such a problem. It is a $60 billion industry that's never going to go away. You know, and especially with identity theft, when there's a breach, a data breach anywhere in the world, and it affects just one consumer of Massachusetts, it has to be reported to my office as well as the Attorney General's office. And unfortunately, I do read through all of the breaches, and it's pretty scary what's going on out there. Doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, how much money you have. If you have a pulse and a social security number, they're going to try to go after you. It's just, it is what it is. Identity theft has been, you know, linked to human trafficking, and it's just, it tends to be a little bit of a taboo. No one really wants to talk about it. If you're over a certain age, you really don't want your family finding out you might have fallen for something because a lot of older seniors are worried about their family taking over. If you are under a certain age, you don't want anybody to find out because what's wrong with you? You're young, you shouldn't be falling for these things. But it is important to know, you know, you aren't being targeted, though sometimes you might feel that way. I get 3 to 5 crazy calls, text messages, emails every single day. I guarantee by the time we're done, I'll probably have 4 missed calls, and they're all probably from MassPass or the federal government saying I owe money to somebody. It's just challenging. But I usually start off these programs talking a little bit about phones because we all have them. And I was doing a lot of research lately, and there are at least 10 apps that anybody can download and put on their own phone that will scramble their phone number. So a lot of these fraudsters will use those apps so that when they make calls to you, they might program it to say Springfield College, Springfield Police Department, Fire Department, your wife, your partner, the hospital, because they know you're more apt to actually answer the phone if it's a number that you recognize or an entity that you recognize. Thank you. But it's really important to know you can't really rely on your caller ID anymore. I mean, if it pops up your mother's name, probably is your mother. But if it says fire department, police department, my office, we never call consumers unless you specifically ask us. But a couple of years ago, someone was spoofing our office and calling people all over, asking for social security numbers, which is not something we would ever do. So with phones, it's just important to know, to be very careful to be answering the phone. If it's a number you know and recognize, yes, it's your doctor's office. Okay, that's one thing. You might want to pick that up. But if they start asking you for a lot of personal information, lots of personal information, could you verify your Medicare number? Could you verify your health insurance information, your credit card information? I'm the new receptionist for Dr. So-and-so. They might give you more and more information as well to make you feel comfortable. It's called social engineering. And with the data breaches that have been happening, there have been more and more high schools, colleges, daycare centers that have been hit with ransomware attacks, hospitals, medical centers. Shields MRI had a massive breach, I think it was a year and a half ago. So what's been going on with all of these breaches is there are copycats. What they do is they will imitate your doctor's office, and these calls are actually being made. They will call you because they've now found out all about your personal information from a breach from whatever medical center. Hi, this is Sarah. I'm calling from Dr. So-and-so's office. We are updating his computer system. I'd just like to go over a little bit of information. Do you still live at 151 Main Street in Auburn, Massachusetts? You last saw this doctor on this date for this ailment, and you're taking this medication. Oh, and you're due to have an MRI in Auburn on January 25th at 10 o'clock in the morning for your hip. Could you just verify some that? Does that sound correct? Wonderful. Could you verify your credit card information? Could you verify your health insurance information? Could you verify your social security number for us? A lot of times these fraudsters, they're not They tend to not do those crazy, hi, I have your mother on the side of the road and we need an ambulance and we need $10,000 in cash. A lot of times they're not being that aggressive. They're using social engineering just to make you feel comfortable, because you're more apt to give more information to somebody over the phone if they've already given you your whole medical history. And they'll do that. They'll imitate banks. They'll imitate, if you have children, they'll imitate your pediatrician's office information. So, when I talk to groups, I say, look, be very careful when you answer that phone. If someone's asking you for all that personal information, they should already have that. Your doctor should have that information. Your bank, your credit card company should already have that information. So you just have to be, take it with a grain of salt. Do you really want to answer that phone? Now, on the flip side, if use a number that you don't recognize, a lot of people, oh my gosh, so many people that I meet, they're like, oh, I love to egg them on, keep them on the phone for an hour, or swear at them, or it's crazy. But the thing is, the more you do that, it irritates the heck out of them. They're selling your cell phone number to somebody else as you're cussing them out, and they're texting your phone number to somebody else. And that's where more and more callers just keep doing it. So if they know it's a working phone and someone's going to pick it up at 2 o'clock on a Saturday, Wednesday, whatever, they're going to keep calling. Today they're going to sell you a new roof. Tomorrow it's solar. The next day it's whatever they want to try to sell you. And I can't express this enough. If you don't recognize the number, don't pick it up. Don't egg them on. Don't swear at them. Don't keep them, put your phone on live and just leave it for an hour. It's just, they don't really care. They're going to keep calling. And as I mentioned, identity theft is linked to human trafficking. There's a great article that just came out where there was a group in the Myanmar area that are taking people off the streets and saying, if you don't make these calls, we will murder you or your family. You make these calls, I don't care, you need to do it, or they will torture you as well. So it was a great article, and it's kind of scary, but some of these people don't necessarily want to be involved. They don't want to call you, they don't want to text you, but they don't have a choice for them, for their family, etc. So with phones, just be wary of that. Don't answer the phone. It sounds simple, but you really just have to be very careful with the phones. The other issue too that our office noticed during the pandemic, a massive jump in texting scams. And they were really simple. This is Amazon, Walmart, Target, Kmart. We have a package for you. Could you click the link to verify your address? That was it. Millions of people across the country fell for that. Millions. And they all got really upset and called whichever office, wherever city they lived in. My office, we got hundreds of calls, hundreds and hundreds of calls. And we kind of joke, oh, well, maybe Amazon is starting to send text messages. They're not sending text messages. If there's a problem with an order, log into your account and you can see there'll be a red flag on your account. I'm sure everybody has ordered something from Amazon in the last 30 days, or Walmart, Target, whomever. But you just have to be very careful with that. One of the bigger frauds that we saw during the pandemic was the unemployment scam. And that was wild to watch it unfold, because people from all over the country got letters from various states, and then they started calling. We got hundreds of calls within a week, and we had to think, the Department of Unemployment, what's going on? We're getting these calls, and then there were copycats in different parts of the country who started sending more letters. Then there were other copycats who got the social security numbers of people in their cities, homeless shelters, and started to apply for unemployment for homeless people. And so we got more and more complaints, and it was just, it's a $60 billion industry that's really never going to go away, unfortunately. But I think the more that we talk about it, different tips. I know whenever I mention changing your password, everybody either looks down, scowls at me, or kind of looks away. No one wants to change their passwords, no matter who you are, how good you are at remembering passwords. But it is so imperative that we change our passwords every 4 or 5 months. I tell people 4 or 5 months. Really, I probably do it every other month. I work for the government. They make me change it every 60 days. It's fine. If you're not great at remembering passwords, that's okay. Have a password keeper. I just got an upgraded phone, and now the phone has it built in already. If you want to talk to your seniors, or if you have a parent or grandparent, help them understand why we need to change and update your passwords. A lot of people think when there's a data breach, it's, oh, they're really getting your social security number and your credit card information. Most times it is, but there are times when data breaches, all they get is your login credentials. So you might get a letter from, say, whatever town that you live in, their library. Hi, this is so-and-so, I'm just letting you know that we had a data breach, but don't worry, all they got was your login credentials, so you should be perfectly fine. And you were probably like, whatever, it's just my login. But what if you're that person who uses that simple login for the library, for your Amazon, for your bank, for your credit cards, for your lender, your mortgage lender? I talk to a lot of people like, oh, I have one really good, strong one. But I'm like, if you're that one strong password gets breached, and now someone has that login credential because they got it through a data breach, they're going to go online to any site they can to try to log in with that credential. And a lot of people live and go, oh, that's not true, that doesn't happen. And I said, yes, it does happen a lot of times. I read through the breaches. Anybody can read the breaches. You can go right online. You can actually see the consumer letter that's sent out on the entity's behalf. So we just have to be very careful, with your credit card, with your passwords, make them long, make them sure they have nothing to do with who you are as a person. I meet so many people who say, my mother's maiden name, 1234 with an exclamation. Well, that can be found online. I can find your mother. I can find your grandmother. I can find the street that you lived on when you were growing up at age 10, or where you went to high school. When people pass away, more and more often their high school yearbooks are being scanned and put online. So you might think, oh, well, no one's going to find out where I went to high school, or if I played soccer. Maybe I'll use my soccer jersey number for my password. Well, your yearbook is probably already online. Mine is from 1991. I know I'm dating myself a bit, but all of those yearbooks have been scanned online. You can go to Boston Public Library and you'll find my yearbook. So, when you are when you are creating a strong password, have it be something arbitrary. I love to use clothing because it's something I'll remember, and no one in the world is going to think I'm going to use black jacket, 1234. Obviously, it's not quite that boring, but try to create something that somebody most likely wouldn't know. Maybe your spouse, maybe your partner might know. I meet people who, if they speak a foreign language, they will create a password and put it into whatever language they speak, and then twist and turn it around a little bit with a 1234 and exclamation and whatever. If you're not good at that, you don't know how to speak a language, fine. How about a song lyric? How about a poem? Whatever. It's just really important. I think the stats for password cracking, I think if it's under 10, a professional can get into it in like 60 seconds or something crazy. If you have people in your life who don't want to change their passwords, I get it. Encourage them to do it, especially your seniors. Get a password keeper. If they don't want to do electronic password keeper, that's totally fine. Have it written down somewhere and hidden away. Don't put it in a file that says passwords. I meet a lot of people who say, I do that all the time. I said, that's not a smart idea. Even my own mother, but she's getting better. She keeps her passwords under the kitty litter box. No one's going to look there. That's what she thinks. With identity theft, a lot of people think it's mainly seniors who are getting hit. Seniors do definitely get hit quite a bit. They're always targeted, always. They're hoping grandma's going to be tired and cranky and just give away too much information. But really, it's the 22 to 28-year-olds who are falling for things more often. And I can say I do have two nieces who are younger. They're in their 20s, and I sometimes trick them. I'm like, what's your social security number? Oh, hold on, let me look. Oh, you keep your social security number in your phone? Haven't we talked about this? You should memorize your social security number. It's not that difficult. Kids leave things everywhere. If you know anybody young in your life, my nieces, they leave their book bags everywhere when they were young. So it's just really important to kind of have those conversations. You know, with social security numbers, a lot of people don't think about, maybe I should do a security check once a year. You can go to annualcreditreport.com. Super easy, very simple to run a security check on all 3 of the credit bureaus. It is the most boring read ever. I totally get it. But you want to make sure that whatever is listed there makes sense. Your name, your address, your date of birth, are things spelled correctly. The credit cards that are listed, if you have a mortgage, if it's listed. I met a woman who, unfortunately, one of the credit bureaus had her listed as deceased, and it took her 6 months to prove she wasn't deceased. So a lot of times people don't think to do a security check, but it's one of the things you can do that doesn't take much time, and you will see if something is wrong. There have been instances where someone's had their information stolen, and they don't think twice about it. They're like, oh, nothing else has happened, until they do a security check. Because they're going to get they talk to their lender to get a mortgage. I met a lovely gal in her 40s who never checked her credit. She knew she had pretty good credit, but she didn't really check it very often or ever. She didn't realize that when she was 12, someone stole her social security number and got a student loan for college, then a master's, and then a PhD. So she went to get a mortgage in her 40s, and her lender came back and said, look, I can't really give you a whole lot of money. You're over $400,000 in debt, and that's going to be tough for me to get you a mortgage, maybe for a 1-bedroom hole in the wall. And she said, what are you talking about? I don't. And he said, look, there are 3 college loans. And she said, oh my gosh, I didn't go to any of those colleges. What is this? It took her a year to clear her name so that she can then go get a mortgage. And they do pop up every couple of years. Oh, you went to this college. She said, no, it's not me. I didn't go to that college. And also we don't think about our kids. More and more colleges, universities, daycare centers, high schools, local little towns have been hit with ransomware attacks. And what happens is your kids' information is now on the dark web. You can't get at it, but someone's going to look at it. And if you don't think, okay, Sarah's 10, who cares? She shouldn't have she shouldn't have any credit because she's 10. But with all of these data breaches, people are using those social security numbers to open up loans, to get a job in different states far from here. And all of a sudden, little Susie turns 16 to go get her license, and there are 3 DUIs in different states under her social security number. They didn't think about it because when Susie was when Susie was 2, she was at a daycare center who had a robbery, and they only stole a laptop. They didn't steal any cash, they didn't steal anything else, just 1 laptop, and they didn't think about it. All the kids' social security numbers were in that laptop. So, identity theft happens to anybody, to any age, any demographic. The best thing you can do, you're never going to know if someone's going to pick up a credit card or a debit card or your social security number, but your best bet, really, quite honestly, is to freeze your credit. It is super easy nowadays. After the pandemic, it's free. It doesn't take much time. What that does is it makes it so if I, as a scammer, get a hold of your social security number in the black market, I think the last time I checked, a full social security was only worth about $10. Not a lot of money. If you have your social security number frozen, I can't open up a new line of credit without your authorization. And that's something that we all should do. If you have a child, kids who are 18 and younger are 52 times more likely to have their information stolen and abused. Because a fraudster knows that mom and dad would probably never do a security check on little Susie. Why would you? She's 2. She shouldn't have any kind of credit. But that's why a lot of times they will go after the younger generation because they can use it for years. And it doesn't pop up. They might pay, like the woman that I mentioned who had 3 college, university, what's the word? Anyways, the person was paying off the student loan, the bare minimum every month, all 3 of the loans. And we're talking like $50 or $60, nothing like big and expensive. So there was never any red flags. She never got a notification, hey, this is the University of whatever for your master's, why are you not paying your bill? Because this person kept paying it off, $50 or $60 a month. So that's why everybody should do a security check. It's super boring, I get it, but it's the one place you will see if something's really wrong. A lot of people ask me about using credit cards over debit cards. If you can try not to use your debit card very often, you'd be better off. Fraud is not a if, it's a when. It will happen. If you think about it, everybody has a phone in this audience, and those phones have cameras. If you give your debit card, you go to a drive-through. It's been found at drive-throughs. Skimming devices are found anywhere. But we all could be fraudsters. If you give me your credit card as you're driving through the drive-through to get coffee, who's to stop me from taking a picture, front and back of your credit card? You don't know what's happening. Now I'm doing a little shopping on your behalf. You're getting your coffee and going home and going, I should check my balances. What are all those charges? Oh my gosh. I'm a weird person. I try never to give my cards away to anybody. If I have to be at a restaurant and they don't come with the machine to the table, I'm weird. I will go up and say, I'll just check myself out, because I don't trust people anymore. I talk about fraud to groups for the last 10 years, and it's never going to go away. And you don't know if that one person that you are dealing with at a restaurant, or you're ordering something over the phone, I don't know, Ella Bean to get, some shirts. I'm not knocking Ella Bean, just an example. But what if you get the one person and you give them your credit card information or debit card, and that person's had the worst day of their life? They're getting divorced, they're going to lose the kids, they've lost their job. Now they're in a bad mood, and they go, well, you know what? I'm going to take your credit card. Who cares? I'm just going to go shopping. I've had the worst day. And we've seen instances like that where people will report that to us. So in regards to a debit card, if your debit card is RFID enabled, and I'm sure everybody in this room knows what RFID enabled, it means you tap the card. If you can use that type of technology as opposed to shoving or swiping, fantastic, use that technology. If your credit card is not put in an RFID blocking container, meaning either a credit card slip, I have a whole bunch, a credit card slip, or they have wallets that have it built in, or purses. I just got a cell phone case that actually has a little pocket for credit cards that is an RFID blocker. That will keep that card a lot safer. You can go on Craigslist and for under $100 get an electrical device, put it in your pocket, and they're teeny. I could walk into a room like this and shoot out a signal and head towards, I wonder where that person keeps your wallet. A lot of men usually keep it on their back pocket. Start shooting a signal out to try to get your credit card information. So if you can, do keep it in some kind of blocking device. They're very cheap. My office ordered like 10,000 of them and just kind of handed out like candy. Just use it. It's just one of those things that you should think about. Most people don't think about. If you have to use a debit card, I get it, but only use it if you are tapping. Don't shove and don't swipe. That's older technology. I try to use a credit card over a debit card across the board. My information's been picked up numerous times. It's fine. I call the credit card company and say, hey, last 10 charges aren't mine. Okay, let's investigate. Cut up your card, we'll send you a new card. Okay, that's irritating if that card is connected to some kind of payment. But if you're that person who uses their debit card in a very old gas station pump and it gets picked up, that person, whoever put that device in the gas station pump, if you use your debit card, can clear your account. So if you have to use a debit card, I get it. Put a daily spending limit so that if someone does get your card, they can only say take out $100, $500, whatever you're comfortable with. The reason I say it is because a friend of mine, she used her debit card at a very old gas station. The card was picked up, and by the time she got home, it was a 20-minute drive, $60,000 was removed from her accounts. And it took 6 months to get all the cash back in. Her freak out level went from 0 to 60 in like seconds. My credit card has been picked up so many times, it is what it is. I don't really care anymore. Like, I'm not gonna be held liable. Hi, it's Visa again. Hey, yeah, okay. New card, okay. But if your credit card is compromised, it's still frustrating and it's still irritating, but at least you can go along if you have cash in your accounts and pay your bills and move on with your life. But if your bank account is cleaned out, it's really hard to move on. It's really hard. It's awful. It's a very horrible situation. So try to use a credit card over a debit card. It's one thing that's going to make life a little bit easier for you guys. Does anybody have any questions so far? Yeah.
I kind of have built-in security for the passwords because every account I have has a different password. That's what they taught us in college.
Yep.
So and I was a non-traditional student, so I followed it. I'm just wondering, when you say password keeper, and I'm an Android user, do you have any suggestions?
Sure. I can't give you a specific password keeper business because I can't really promote one business over the other. There are electronic password keepers for Androids as well. I would say, like any business you're thinking about doing business with, you should do your due diligence and look up information, see where the company is headquartered, see if there are any complaints. How does the business handle the complaints? You can probably look in the Attorney General's office and see if there's been business complaints about that specific password keeper. The one that I have been using for a while, I just did a deep dive. And I think whenever you look into a piece of technology online, whether it's a business or it's a password keeper, you'll get a lot of reviews from techie people who will say, oh my God, I use this one because it's easy, it's cheap, or what have you. I tend to look at if the business had a data breach. How do they handle the data breach? What kind of information was breached? Do I really want to use a business that's already had a breach? I look at a lot of different things, but I do look at reviews because it's just, you got to do your due diligence and just don't go willy-nilly because you just never know. I mean, I talk to so many people, they're like, oh, I love Temu and I love Shein. And I'm like, yeah, but those businesses aren't here in the United States. You've got to be very careful. They are taking all of your information. They keep it. Whatever business you're thinking about, where are they located? What is their return policies? How do they handle dealing with sellers and shoppers from other countries? We get a lot of complaints. We do have consumer hotlines on Mondays and Wednesdays. I think we're getting up to 500 or 600 calls a day. Those 2 days alone, people want to complain about everything, and which is fine. I love to hear about complaints unless they're really bizarre and don't make any sense. But I think for Android, there are password keepers that you can find pretty easily. That's just my suggestion for that.
I just thought, with all the built-in security stuff, I have to change the password. So of course I don't remember, but
Of course,
any
it does.
of them, right? But,
Yeah.
if I have to change it, it really doesn't bother me because it's just built-in security.
I love those. I think those are fantastic. It's just when people say, use the open internet, go www.auburnlibrary.com, and they're using open Wi-Fi, and they're not thinking, and they don't realize there's a lurker. There are weird people called lurkers who sit in offices. They sit in pediatricians' offices, doctors' offices, libraries, coffee shops, waiting for people to log in on their own device because they're using the free Wi-Fi. Everybody's given the same password if you're at Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not knocking Dunkin', but everybody gets the same password. And if you have that odd person who's waiting and, oh, look at that, she's going online, let's just see what we can do. That's where, you should be using VPN. You should be very careful. I love that most businesses or big companies now have their own secure apps. So for example, Amazon, Bank of America, just pure examples. So if you are using open Wi-Fi and you do want to do a little shopping, fine, but use the app. That's a secure way of paying for something. But unfortunately, I meet far too many people who just are sitting in a coffee shop, checking their bank account information, but they're not using an app like www. Like, oh, wow, why are you doing that? it's just kind of scary what some people do and some people don't, I think. Are there any other questions right now?
I was just gonna recommend
Yeah.
password manager.
Oh, there we go.
There's a password manager called Bitwarden. They have like the free version of it it pretty much has everything we need, but they have like a 10-year subscription that has even more features where you can get like 6-digit codes built into the app, and it's open source, so a bunch of different people on the internet and researchers and stuff analyze the application for security. I've been using it for like the last 3 years, and anybody who asks, I always recommend it. So.
Bitfinder,
Bitwarden.
Bitwarden, okay.
You're in the perfect place to ask. Who's using what?
Yes, thank you very much.
I think I won't take too much more time. I know we have very limited time, but, monitoring your information, I can't think of, every time I talk to groups, no one looks at their bank account, they don't look at their credit card statement, maybe once a month, maybe. You're all young, you all have phones, download the app for your bank, download the app for your credit card information, and check and monitor your information, because most fraudsters are not gonna go on a massive shopping spree. It's gonna get caught immediately. If I don't tell my credit card company that I'm going to this store to buy a brand new laptop tomorrow, they won't let that charge go through because they beyond what I usually spend. And people don't think about that. So you really should be monitoring that information because we all have cell phones. And what if I get your credit card information immediately? But for the most part, these fraudsters they don't spend thousands of dollars. They make more money frauding everybody in this room $1 or $2 every month than trying to go after one of us for $10,000, because your bank's going to pick it up immediately. So you just have to have your due diligence. Look at your credit card statement when it comes in. If there's any weird charge for $1, maybe you only go to CVS for all of your pharmacy needs and something pops up from Brooks Pharmacy. That should be your own red flag. That should be your red flag. Oh, never go there. What is that charge? And it's surprising that I with people that I meet, they never do that. And I'm not asking you to balance your checkbook, but look at your statements, because that's where you're going to see something if something happens, unfortunately. I think a lot of times when people ask me about social media, everybody loves social media. Whatever you're on, just don't overpost. I don't need to know that you are having eggs for breakfast and tomorrow you're going to Ireland for 10 years and this and that and the other. People post way too much stuff. And then you don't know who's looking at it. You don't know if your friend, only your friends can see your stuff. But what if I infiltrate one of your friends and go, oh, look at that. That guy is leaving the country for 2 weeks. He's going to Ireland. He's going to have the vacation of a lifetime. Well, someone's going to figure out where you live. Oh, well, what time is his flight? Great, it's 6:30. He's leaving for the airport right now. Let's go see if we can get into his house. That's actually been attributed to a lot of divorces and people having access to passwords, but say the husband doesn't or the wife does. There was a terrible article about a very, very bad divorce, and the husband set up all of the technology in the house. And he was asked to leave the house, and it was a custody battle. It was not pretty. He decided, because most of our homes are sort of smart device homes. You can turn on a bread maker, you can turn on your fridge, you can take off all kinds of weird things. He used it against her. So she would come home, the front door was unlocked, there was no light on, the oven was on at like 400 degrees, the refrigerator had been turned off, and so she thought she was kind of losing her mind. Oh, well, I don't think my wife should have the children. She clearly has a problem. So you never know with technology. Now in most divorces, everybody has to have all the passwords. And I never even thought about that, but everybody has to have the passwords. And then going back to the social media with the overposting, funerals and weddings, those are the biggest things that we hear about, funerals and weddings, because people post. As soon as someone gets engaged, I love it, that's fantastic, get engaged. Don't tell the entire planet. You guys might be too young for this, but there was a show a long time ago called Candid Camera, and with Alan Funt, and his son is now a big producer. a movie producer and makes a lot of money. His daughter got engaged, and he started to overpost the heck out of what was going on. Oh my gosh, here's the ring. Whoop. The whole world doesn't need to know what kind of ring she's wearing because now someone could go, oh, try to steal someone's wedding band, but whatever. He was posting on such a constant, like daily. Can't wait to walk my daughter down the aisle. Just left the house. Who goes to a wedding that isn't more than an hour? His wedding was, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 hours, whatever it was. As soon as he walked out of the house, within hours, his house was hit. All of the wedding gifts, lots of stuff in his home were all stolen. And so he wrote an article saying, hey, don't post your pictures online until you get home from that fabulous vacation. Or if you're going to say that you're going to wherever for however long, just say, oh, my home, the person's going to be watching my house sitter's just arrived. It happens with funerals. Dear Lord, people post way too much about funerals, but then they also list every single family member. So that a lot of fraudsters will say, hey, all of these people probably going to be at this funeral that's going to be located on this street in this town for 2 or 3 hours. I wonder what kind of information we can find out about these people. I wonder where they live. Maybe we can hit up their house. Social media is just, say hit and dry. You know, you either love it or you hate it, or it's a little bit of both. But I just can't say enough to not overpost. Don't put weird things online. Don't answer those little flyers that say, oh, where did you go to high school? What street did you grow up on? Because those are a lot of times security answers. Don't post those. Don't do those. Do them offline. You know, it's just, I know people want to share, but you have to be very careful with what you're oversharing about, I think. What else can I answer for you guys? Everybody's very quiet. You're all going to do change your passwords today? Or download an app? Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Putnam.
Sure.
Appreciate you being here and sharing all that insight with us.
Absolutely.
Just some other additional information I can share with you. And if you're aware of all of this, I appreciate your insight. One is there is a digital exhaust guide. Have you guys heard of this? Digital exhaust guide? So the FBI has a guide. It's out of Kansas, Missouri's field office. I forget the gentleman's name, but he posted it and keeps a regular, I think it's up to version 3 now, regular cadence to it. Of course, anything that goes into print is out of date the second it hits the paper, right? Because the apps change so much. But you'll get the idea of how to protect and how to forcibly batten down the hatches of all these apps and security profiles to keep your privacy intact. And it goes through all the social media, the popular ones, Facebook and right now. So it's worth a read if you want to kind of get an idea of what happens and how it happens and what to look at. The other thing is, have I been pawned?
I love that.
Have I been pawned? You guys are familiar with that one, right? It's a website. You go to haveibeenpawned.com, you can punch in some of your data, and it'll tell you if it's already been found out on the dark web, on the internet. That's a good site. The other thing I like to do, you can tell me if this is bad behavior, but I like to look at my credit reports once a quarter, because in Massachusetts, you're allowed to get 1 annual free report. So I go to each clearinghouse every quarter. So there's a couple of them out there, and I pull from that clearinghouse to look at my credit report. It doesn't charge me anything, and it tells me what they see about me. I do have my credit frozen, which is great until you go to buy something and forget it's frozen. But it takes only a few seconds to unlock it, and it is free now.
Yeah.
So it's a good behavior. Yeah, I just wanted to share that. Does anybody else have any tidbits? Anything you want to share?
Well, just a quick question. When you get your or request your credit report, do you have to unfreeze your credit to do that?
No.
You don't.
I do it online. What was I going to
Is
say?
there a question?
Sorry.
Just a quick statement, on show of hands, who's got like teenage daughters, sons, whatever, right? Okay, so quick story, my daughter, years ago, I was having a conversation about, cybersecurity with someone, and she was like, Mom, I got something to tell you. And I said, what's up? And she said, yeah, I got this text message that my Amazon account got locked. She has access to Amazon, yeah. My Amazon account got locked, and, you know, I needed to click on this link to do blah, 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 blah. And she said I clicked on it, and then something popped up and said this site was bad, was, you know, malicious. And because I put a mobile threat defense solution on her phone. So if you have teenagers, make sure you put that on there because they're always going to be clicking on stuff. So my next comment to her was, thank you for telling me, but what did I tell you about clicking on links?
Yeah. Was there another comment?
I don't know if you mentioned this already, forgive me, I was a little late, but, you know, you talk about security and changing passwords and stuff. Your email is probably one of the most important things to have a separate secure password for, because that's where all of your I forgot my password links are sent. So make sure that you have your email secure and hardened, set up a multi-factor authentication. Most of the big ones already force that onto you, but definitely recommend it. And then, speaking from experience, make sure you back up your MFA method so that you know how to get back in. You get a new phone, make sure that that's one of the first things you think about is getting your MFA recovered and restored.
Oh, 100%. It's a good point. When I first had MFA options, first it started with the banks, and then it went to other applications, and now it's everywhere. So I use it everywhere, and I didn't do a good job with recovery code storage. I didn't put it in the safe. I printed it out, forgot where I put it, and my phone was stolen. My phone is my MFA device. So I am locked out of absolutely everything because I don't have my phone. So that was fun trying to convince everybody who I was to get back into these systems. Had to create new accounts. But it's worth that pain point, you know, if you make that mistake, rather than having to recover from somebody else using your credit, destroying your credit and finances. The other thing I suggest, and we brushed on it, I'm not recommending this particular company, but it's the only one I know by name. I'm sure you guys know others, but Economy is a database monitoring system for the web. Looks for your data out on the web as a service for you. It notifies you if it finds something out there, dark web monitoring, regular internet monitoring. So I myself use that service, but I think there's like 4 or 5 other really top-notch services out there like that. So just, you know, Google or do some sort of search for Economy competitors or something like that. It's ICOGNI. And, you know, figure out what works best for you, but I suggest you use that service. You should monitor yourself, but it doesn't hurt to have a team behind you supporting you in that effort.
Yeah, 100%.
I got one more thing if we're nerding out on security. This right here is a physical security key. You can buy one of these. This one was like 30 to 40 bucks. And without this key, I can't get to any of my accounts. So even if someone gets my password or they get a 6-digit code or something, without this, they can't get into the account. But also, if like I was just about to freak out because I thought I left my keys in the car. Without this, I can't do anything. I can't get into my work accounts. I can't get into my personal accounts. So this is something that's worth considering. It's a physical security key. Yeah.
You have a backup for your business.
Yes, I actually have a second key that I have in the lockbox. Because if I lose this one, I have to have another one or I'm screwed. Yeah.
Any other comments or questions from Ms. Putnam?
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Ms. Thompson from Amazon Web Services. We'll give her like 5-10 minutes to get all set up and configured. If you guys need a bathroom break, grab some drinks, some snacks, feel free to talk amongst yourselves. We'll be right back.
Not really. Although it's kind of confusing. Apparently nobody. You know, it's not great. So, yeah. Right. So.
They're sitting like
You went over there. So they yeah. So that would be this
yeah, there you go. Yes. All right, everyone. Get back to gear here. So we're delighted to have Ms. Putnam and of course Ms. Thompson now from Amazon Web Services with her crew here today. We have some experts in the room. Ms. Tammy Roberts and is it Christopher?
Yes.
From here. They help support the school and other local businesses. But together, they are an excellent team from Amazon Web Services. I myself have been utilizing their services for the website for this facility. It's all hosted up on Amazon behind all their infrastructure. Easy to manage, quick and easy to set up. Great local support to reach out to. So in all of that, we've developed a working relationship, and I learned about Mrs. Thompson recently, who is the Executive Advisor for Amazon Web Services State and Local Government. And she's local to us for the services. She works for us at Amazon, and she has mind sharing your background. She's the first Chief Risk Officer for the North Carolina state offices before she came to AWS. So that's a historic moment in that space. Great leadership, shows great capabilities. And Amazon made a good choice having her as an advisor for all of the people like us, all the businesses out here that need that guidance and support. She is very kind to come out and speak with us today about zero trust and identity protection, and her team's here to help back her up if she has any questions, technical stuff that you guys need some support with. But without further ado, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you, Gene. Good afternoon, everyone. I think you can hear me loud. Actually, I think the entire group without needing all of the things, but I know that we're being videotaped here. Thank you for having me speak with you today. A little bit more about my background. So before I became the State Chief Risk and Security Officer for the state of North Carolina, I also did 20 years in the Marine Corps. So I retired as a cybersecurity chief for the Marine Corps. So I say all that because just to show that I've been in the DoD side of the world. I've also worked in federal agencies and security roles, state and local government, education, and now at AWS I support as an executive government advisor. I've been with AWS now for a little over 4 years. I think June will be my 5th year there, so time flies, by the way. So I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about zero trust and identity protection. And I'm not going to go a deep dive into our services or anything like that, but if you do have questions, that's why Chris is here and Tammy's here to support and really give you that look under the hood type conversation. This is going to be a high level topic around what are best practices as you think about your security program and some of the things that you should be thinking about as you move forward with that. So just wanted to level set your expectations there. By the way, I hate speaking at people. I'd like it to be a little bit more informal and have you engage with me. So if there's anything that I say that kind of piques your interest and you have a question, please feel free to ask at any time. And I will support that as much as possible. But yeah, or if you don't ask questions, I might point at you. So if I make eye contact with you for too long, I'm going to point at you. I'm just kidding. So I'm going to be covering like a little bit about the threat landscape, level set about what zero trust is and how we think about zero trust at AWS and why is it important and why you should be thinking about it as you think about your environment, protecting your environment, protecting your critical data and your assets that you have throughout your organization and how to get started. And, again, of course, the wrap up with some Q&A questions. Any questions so far? Nope. Moving on. Okay. So I love the fact that Ms. Putnam, she started off, she really, I think, primed this conversation because she talked about how you should be protecting your identities from a user, an end user perspective. And so now we're talking about it. How do you do it from a technical perspective? How do you think about it, when you're looking at your endpoints, your laptops, your phones, all your devices? What does your network look like? What does your apps look like? So it's not just thinking about it from me as a user, but thinking about it a little bit more holistically, tying in what you've learned from her standpoint and what you can do on a technical level to protect your data. So what does the threat landscape look like? I know a lot of you that are in the security realm are familiar with the global threat report that CrowdStrike puts out every year. And if you're not, this is just a quick snapshot of what they're seeing. And they have a high visibility across the threat landscape. They see a lot of the threats that are happening globally. And one of the things that I really want to call out here is the breakout time. So the e-crime breakout. Are you familiar with what breakout means? That is a concept. Basically, when the bad guys, when the bad actors get into your network, whether it's through a stolen credential or so on and so forth, and then they start to spread laterally and start to learn more about your environment and doing more harm, maybe planting Trojans and all of those types of malicious activities. So the e-breakout time, the fastest. So I think last year it was 82 minutes, somewhere around there. It was 80 minute, and that's the time that they get a foothold in your environment and start to do malicious activity spread laterally. It's dropped to 48 minutes. So that is how fast they're able to get into your environment and start to really get their tentacles out there and find out, and do impact in your environment. But the fastest breakout time is 51 seconds. So I'm like, I know, that's the look that I had when I read that as well. It was like 51 seconds. Did they just leave the door open? Was it password? Password was password, whatever it was, but 51 seconds. So they're getting faster. And I've been following this threat report year after year, and I've seen the decrease in the time. And so, generally I'd ask organizations, do you think that you have the ability right now, knowing your capability for those who have organizations, to identify, detect, protect, and respond in 48 minutes? That's what you're up against. Another thing that is of importance here that I want to call out is the access brokers. So you heard Ms. Putnam talk about how your credentials are being sold on the dark web. Well, these access brokers, they're increased year over year, 50%. More of them are out there. And so, you think, well, if the FBI and all of these other agencies, if they're able to catch these guys, that they'll be able to, maybe bring them to their knees. Well, unfortunately, the access brokers are not generally the same people that are developing the software that hacks into your network. So they have a whole really well-groomed operation out there where the person that's selling your credentials is not the person that actually got the credentials, is not the person that developed the actual software to get into your environment, ransomware as a service, whatever it is. So generally, the law enforcement agencies would be able to capture one, but then they would splinter off, create another group somewhere else, or they have a really good business model. They're getting better at what they're doing, and that's why we need to get better at doing what we need to do to protect our information and our livelihood, our proprietary data that we have within our organizations. I think the other thing that I'd want to call out here, phishing attacks. So, because we talked about phones, right? And we're seeing more and more, you're getting more text messages, spam text messages out there, like my daughter with the link, to click on, and then these types of things. That's increasing as well, because, as we find ways to mitigate the risk, they're finding ways around those risks. I use personally on my phone, I have AT&T, I'm not selling AT&T. I have AT&T, and they have, I think one of their mobile iron, or not mobile iron, I can't remember the name of it, that is one of their no-cost solutions that help to mitigate the risks, like a mobile threat defense on your phone. So if you have a carrier and you're not using that, it helps to reduce the spam calls coming in. I love it. And unfortunately, some good calls get caught up in the spam calls, but if they're not in your contacts, it's a risk you take. It goes to voicemail, and you can contact them after. But if you're not using that, you really should think about leveraging these types of technologies to again, reduce the noise that's coming at you from a personal perspective. So, and what we're also seeing too is, how are they getting our information, right? How did I get on these call lists? Yes, they're stealing credentials, but they're also able to access SaaS providers out there, because they're holding your data. Any of those companies that you give your data to, you don't know if they're protecting your data. And so they're able to get in, they hack in through, compromise their single sign-on, whatever their identities are. And if they want to distribute phishing or smishing text messages, they have access to your phone numbers. They have access to you directly. If they want to go, again, it depends on what they're trying to achieve here. If they're trying to get your data, they're able to go through these organizations that have your data, and they're able to compromise that data through there, and get your access to your identity and your sensitive information there. And credentials, again, if that's the motive that they're trying to get credentials, there's another path for them as well. But it all leads to compromising one, impact one, and affect many. And that's what we're seeing right now, is that's why we have to think about our supply chain. What partners are we using within our ecosystem? How secure are they? Because if they're not following best practices, guess what? They're gonna fall victim. And we're somehow interconnected with them. We're sharing data with them. Our data, our data might reside in their their environment, or they may have access to our environment. And so you really have to think about critically about supply chain management. And then of course we have AI, right? And we know that this is the topic du jour for the past couple of days. AI is changing, it's transforming the way that we do business. But guess what? It's transforming the way that they do business as well. And so they have their different models, their large language models that are created without the guardrails, without the secure guardrails to hack in and become more efficient at what they're doing. So now they don't even have to do a lot of the heavy lifting and the reconnaissance that they would have to do in the past. They just have to, use their solutions, and it would go out, get that information, because we have a lot of our information out in the public. And they get that information and they're able to, compromise our environments. They're able to know, okay, how many websites out there that have SSH open to the internet? How many, and somebody has that data, somehow it's aggregated somewhere, and they can go out and get that at speed and be able to be more efficient at what they're doing. So you have Worm GPT, Fraud GPT, Bard, all of these types of models out there. And then there's actually, I would say not necessarily good models, but there's models that we use every day that may not necessarily have those guardrails, that's not built responsibly, that will give you information. For example, write a code for ransomware that encrypts all files with the following extensions. And this large language model will tell you, here's how to do it, and so on and so forth. So when you think about AI, there's always good, there's the transformative ways that AI can be innovative to your environment, but there's also the bad ways where the bad guys are out there. And one of the things that I always like to stress is, don't be afraid of AI and the capability of AI. If it's used responsibly, you can definitely do good things, but the only way that you can fight the bad AI is with the good AI. So it is that, I like to call it, I might be dating myself here, but there's a cartoon back in the day, Spy versus Spy. You got the yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Exactly. And then we're also seeing where there's synthetic identities also that are being created out there. So there's a lot of things that's happening. I don't know if you're familiar with this, where there are a few colleges that were impacted by that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, where they're creating these fake identities and enrolling them into classes so that they can get the financial aid. And then, so there's these bots basically that are sitting in these classes, and somebody's getting the payout from them. And the only way that they're able to find out is because the teachers were, wait a minute, John Smith is not necessarily keeping up with his work. Something's going on here, something anomalous is going on. So AI is definitely changing the way that we look at threats. And the threats just keep coming at us more and more, and we need to be more responsive. And that's why we have to think about, how do we protect our environment? How do we do it from a foundational level? And that's why zero trust is one of those concepts that are being used to to reduce the risk, because there's no framework, I will say, or tool, no single tool that can stop all risks. You're always going to have risk. You're always going to have residual risk. It's how you manage it. It's how you mitigate it. It's how you are able to recover if something impactful happens within that environment. And if you're do we have any government folks? No government? Mainly students and faculty, so on and so forth. Okay. But what we're seeing, in addition to all the threats that are coming at organizations, is all of these things. You still have compliance requirements. FERPA, if you're a research environment, you have CMMC or security requirements that you have to have in place to protect the specific sensitive data that you have, federal data. What I'm seeing is that a lot of organizations have a lack of data and IT strategy. They have something on paper, but it's not actually something that you can actualize. It looks good because it does a check in the box. But if the security team doesn't have something that they can sink their teeth into, then they can't protect that environment. And so there's always that miscommunication, if you will, or a miss between those two teams. Workforce shortages, that continues to be an issue. But, with having labs that you're seeing here and the SOC is another way that I see across many organizations across the state, that they're leveraging these types of SOCs to kind of build a workforce and hopefully get people more ready to fight that battle. Dealing with legacy infrastructure. I talk to state agencies and local government, and you'd be surprised some of the legacy infrastructure that they have. It can be scary. And a story I like to tell too is, and also when you think about it, you think about how innovative and forward-thinking the leadership needs to be in order to really move the needle and secure that environment. I went a couple of years ago, I met with the CIO of a water municipal. And I asked him about ransomware. I said, is that a concern for you? And his answer to me, he said, well, we just invested in some firewalls. And I can tell you that I think I froze because my brain froze. I'll tell you that, because I was like, how do I tactfully tell him that firewalls is not going to protect you from ransomware attack? It is a part of your defense in depth strategy, but it is not going to save you. It is not the holy grail it used to be back in the day, 20 years ago. You need more than that. But this is a water municipal, and you've all heard about the attacks against water municipals in the past years, where they were able to get in and change some of the levels of the chemicals and so on and so forth in Florida, and I think there was another state that was impacted by that. So you do have to, leadership needs to understand this is the strategy. We need to continually evolve our security practices in order to get better. Supply chain disruptions is what I mentioned earlier. And then we have emerging technologies and threats. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. Pardon the expression I always say, what fresh hell that tomorrow will bring for us, that might happen. And, and we also want to be innovative. We also want to transform our environments. And this is what the National Association of State CIOs for 2026, these are the top 10 priorities for states, CIOs across all states. You'll see artificial intelligence is number one, cybersecurity is number two, and cybersecurity actually was number one for like the past 10 years. And it was this first time ever that something else actually took that ranking away. But these are the things that they're looking at. So you have the threats coming at you, but you also have to keep moving forward. You have to keep being innovative. You have to provide services for your customers in an efficient way and in a secure way. But how do you do that? You have to have a framework. You have to have a strategy around that. And that's where Zero Trust fits in. I'm going to pause right here and ask quickly, who's heard of Zero Trust? Good. Okay. I don't know if I should ask this. Who's on that journey of implementing Zero Trust? Awesome. Okay, well, it's a start, right? Because Zero Trust really is a journey. It's not a one and done. There's never a check in the box that says, yes, I'm Zero Trust. Trusted. Or, if a partner, such as even AWS, even if I come to you and say, I can make you Zero Trust compliant, you probably should run the other way, because it is not a one solution. It is a solution of solutions. It is a framework. It is a concept of how you are protecting your environment. How are you reducing the blast radius within your environment? So when they get in, because they will, when they get in, how do they only have access to that limited amount of data, that limited amount of limited area within your environment to do harm? That's what you want to do. Slow them down so that you can catch them and you can kick them back out of your environment, and you can recover and reconstitute whatever has been damaged. It's trust but verify. And so what this is just saying is, Zero Trust is, it's a group of principles, right? It's looking at various parts of your environment, looking at them holistically and saying, we don't want these environments to talk to each other just to talk to each other. Back in the day, we used to have some people call it the raised floor, the server room, where everything within the server room, if any server could talk to any server, we didn't care, because guess what? It's in the server room, everything's protected. That has changed. And that, a lot of things have changed that. The pandemic, the remote working, the fact that our perimeter, security perimeter is no longer the same that it used to be back in the day. The firewall is not the bastion that's protecting everyone from attacks. back in the day. It's a different world. It's a different environment that we're living in. We have IoT devices. Everything's connected. Your phones, I'm going to pause right here and tell another quick story. A couple of years ago, I was about to buy a refrigerator. And, you go in and you're like, oh my God, there's this refrigerator that can tell me if my milk, if I can, I'm going to need new milk, more milk or whatever. And I thought to myself, yeah, but then I have to connect that to the internet. And then I have to protect, and yes, I can segment it. And I thought, do I really need that? And the answer was no at the end of the day. I don't need to have everything in my house connected. I went away from my original concept of, smart home, dumb owner. That's what I originally went into. Now I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to make a risk decision. What is more important for me what it needs to be connected and what doesn't need to be connected? And how can I segment my network within my home to ensure that I protect everything that's happening within my home? Now, show of hands, who has a refrigerator that pretty much talks to them? I know there's at least one. There's normally one person.
I have a smart refrigerator, but it just, tells me the door is open or.
The minor things, yeah. So Zero Trust, it is a security strategy intended to help reduce organizational attack surface, reduce your risk broadly across your environment. And here are some definitions. So Zero Trust really came about from the DoD and the federal space, where they came up with the model, and it's mandated for them to implement it. However, it's not mandated for us, but it is really a great framework. And one of the things that I like to evangelize is the fact that if you see something coming from the federal level, a mandate or so on and so forth, while it might not necessarily be mandated to us today, there's going to be a trickle-down effect. We will feel the impact, and it just makes more sense to look at that and see, does it make sense for my environment? How can I tweak it to meet my environment's needs? And how do I implement it and to bring value to the business overall? So as you can see, at AWS, we define it as a conceptual security model, associated sets of mechanisms that focus on providing security controls around digital assets that do not solely or fundamentally depend on traditional network controls or network perimeters, basically almost everything that I said earlier. DoD defines it a little bit different, but they are all saying the same. It is a concept, it is a framework. It is not a necessarily prescriptive guidance. And so you have to take that and really understand your network and understand how it fits within the construct of your environment. And this is what this is showing here is how authorization should happen. One of the big things, one of the big key players with Zero Trust is identities. Is one of the first things that you should be focused on. And if you think about everything that you've heard today, how are environments being compromised? Generally through credentials being stolen, right? Yet organizations, I think, spend a lot of money. I see them spending more on I guess the other end, the response end of it, instead of the more proactive end. How do we ensure that our credentials don't get stolen firstly? Because if that's the way that they're getting into our environment and then they're starting to spread laterally and getting access to all of our devices, then we should be focusing on identity as a core part of your Zero Trust journey. Obviously, there's network, there's devices, there's application, there's all of these other principles that are part of Zero Trust. But if you were to step in and say, tomorrow, I want to kickstart my Zero Trust journey, I would highly recommend that you start focusing on the identity side of it first as part of your core actions. And what this is saying again is authorization across. So if you're thinking about identities and who has access to what, you're thinking about who has access to your edge devices, your perimeter, network segments, applications, infrastructure, microservices, data access, cloud apps. All of that needs to be part of your entire construct when you think about, and don't forget your SaaS providers as well. And I think a lot of organizations, when they think about their Zero Trust, they think only about what I have on-prem, not necessarily what I have in the cloud, not necessarily what, maybe a SaaS provider, granted that's cloud, but cloud services that I'm leveraging. That needs to be part of your framework. That needs to be part of your overall project. But implementing zero trust also comes with its own challenges. And I've mentioned some of the, accelerating cyber threats that are happening out there, and government mandates, remote work evolution, data protection requirements. Organizations right now, and I'll pause right here, that are stepping into AI and leveraging AI, large language models to do different research and different business-focused evolutions, are finding out that data is becoming more and more critical to that whole conversation. It's not just, I want to implement AI because I want to implement AI. It's a matter of what am I trying to achieve, but I also need to know that I need to have data governance implemented as well. I need to understand where my data sits. I need to know who has access to it. That's all part of the whole zero trust model again. And so if you started down the journey of zero trust for your on-prem environment, now you need to include AI as part of that as well. And the whole, go ahead. Good, I love that. And maybe we can actually do some data sharing so that everyone understands that, because I think that as I speak across the country, I know that there's folks that are missing pieces of that. They're afraid of touching on that. They're afraid of the data piece of it because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of heavy lifting, tagging the data, understanding where the data sits, the sensitivity of the data. All of those things are all part of that construct. So when you think about a state agency that has decades of data, because they don't delete anything. We do not delete anything. So we're talking about decades and decades upon data, and duplicative data points that are out there. It's a lot of data, and they have to parse through it and do all of the heavy lifting to get it to where it is functional to leverage AI technology in order to really broadly take advantage of a lot of the capabilities that it brings. So some of the drivers that are causing all of that is obviously all of these things, but the challenges are you still have legacy infrastructure, you still have budget constraints, and we're seeing that. Last week I sat through a National Association of State Budget Officers. There's their annual review, and basically what they saw is that across all the states, majority of the states, there is a tightening of budgets. Cost optimization is one of the key things for 2026. And so how do you do more with pretty much less? That is the conversation that's being had. Cultural resistance. We see that a lot happening. We don't want to do another framework here. How do we layer this onto what we've always been doing? Remember that cybersecurity is never a one and done. It is a continuous, it's an iterative process. You always have to be assessing your environment to see, is the framework that I'm using in the past right for the threats for today and right for my environment today? Should I be looking at something else? How do I change the mindset of the people within my organization to think security first and not necessarily, I just want to get on a computer and tinker and do my job and then leave. Security is everybody's job. Compliance requirements, user experience, and of course, resource limitations. These are all some of the the challenges that customers that I see are facing. And the question that I hear all the time is, what are the optimal patterns? Basically, what is the bare minimum I need to do to protect my environment? That's what they're asking, without blowing the budget, without having to employ 10 other resources. How do I do this? And the way that we think about it at AWS is through these guiding principles. Avoid binary choices. It's not network versus identity centric. Think holistically. It's not cloud versus SaaS solutions. Again, think holistically. Work backwards from your use case. When you think about zero trust, think about it that I'm not trying to boil the ocean with my implementation. Where is my most critical data? Where does it sit? How do I protect that? Not necessarily how do I protect the entire environment, because guess what? That is going to be, that's the big elephant to take what's the saying? You take a bite out of the elephant. That is going to be a huge undertaking. And so when we think about zero trust, you have to think about it from a use case perspective. Small, digestible chunks. One size doesn't fit all. Just because you see it implemented this way in another organization doesn't necessarily make it right for your organization. It has to fit within your construct. You can learn from other organizations, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the same way. And it is a journey. You start where you are. And I would recommend that if you choose to think about zero trust and implement it within your environment, that you do an assessment first, and I'll cover that in following slides, but you assess where you currently are. Because I think when organizations and when people think about this is a new framework that I have to implement, they don't think about what they currently have within their environment. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You right now might have tools that are already in place within your organization that can already get you closer to where you need to be in your journey of zero trust. It's not, I have to go out tomorrow and buy a whole new set of tools, a whole new set of processes. It's a matter of taking a look at what you currently have and starting to define those use cases where it makes sense within your environment and implement it phase by phase. I always say, when I was at North Carolina, I never implemented anything just one-off and implemented it right then and there. If I was implementing something privacy related, it was phase 1. This is what I hope to achieve in phase 1. Phase 2, phase 3, I would break it into digestible chunks. So 1, it helps with the cultural transformation, as well as it gives you time, and then everyone gets to buy into the program as you go into the different phases versus trying to rip the Band-Aid off. I'm going to pause here and see if you have any questions.
Has Amazon tried using AI as middleman to basically kind of counteract all of the attacks?
Oh, yeah. If I understand your question correctly, you want to know if Amazon, specifically AWS, uses AI and ML technologies to fight the Yes, we do. We have it built into numerous services, and I can actually send you some information that we released in reInvent, which was November of last year, that speaks to some of the security changes that we've implemented from our own identity and access management solution, and how we're leveraging AI in that route. We also have a solution called, it's not a solution, it is a process that we have called MadPot. MadPot is a global, and we're the leading cloud provider, so we have a global footprint. We have, for lack of better choice of words, these honeypots out there that collect all of these bad, things that are happening that we see globally across the world, and all of that is being fed back into our solutions to help to protect, the data that we have and our customers' data. You have go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of have a follow-up.
Okay.
It's kind of
And also we have security agent.
It's okay. Does the AI program actually try to actively lure people to a certain point to kind of trap them or sandbox them there?
So as it pertains to the honeypot in particular, I think that's part of that whole, the whole environment, is that we see, it's not a matter of just seeing, because you remember you're interacting with the bad guys, and you're the way that honeypot does too is it's shifting its services. So it's being deceptive in the way that it does things, and we're able to so they are being lured because they think that they're attacking something that really doesn't exist. So there's that. And we also have other services that have just, we have one that's in preview recently that does continuous penetration testing, and it's called Security Agent, AWS Security Agent. That's we released in November at reInvent. So there's a lot of development that's happening around AI for the good, to help us not just from a business optimization, but also from a security perspective as well. And all that's being fed back into the services that we provide, so that you're quicker to identify and detect and prevent attacks from happening within your environment. And if you have anything else that pops up, please feel free to. I love the engagement.
Yeah, kind of another follow-up. Has your AI program actually developed far enough to be able to trace them back to where their IP address is?
I do not have that information. That is probably more core AWS infrastructure. I can find that information for you, but I don't have that information right now. But I get what you're saying. Yeah, you're talking about more the offense side.
Yeah.
I will say though, on that front, whatever intel that we have, we share across all our competitors, even all the clouds. We share the threats that we're seeing broadly, because we know that if they're attacking us, they're attacking Google, they're attacking Azure, they're attacking Oracle Cloud. So that data sharing, that threat intel sharing happens at a very higher level, above my pay grade, but that happens, and also with our federal agencies and so on and so forth, because we're all part of that ecosystem doing that battle. So zero trust, when you look at zero trust, don't just think about it from a security only perspective. You think about the values that it brings to you from a business perspective as well. So if you're a CTO, if you're a CIO, you might not care. You care about security, but generally they're not very big on the security side of it. They say, that's what my CISO does, that's what my security team does. I just want to make sure that I can deliver services to my customers, and I have high availability, all of these things. You have to think about how zero trust enables that. And as a security person, when you're talking to your leadership, you need to be able to clearly articulate the business value of zero trust, because your CIO, your CTO is going to be like, why should I invest in more tools or whatever? How does that help me deliver my service? How does that how does that bring customer satisfaction? How does that enable the overall mission of the organization and not just the security side of it? So you have to be able to speak to those things, those points, those data points that will show the value that zero trust brings across, the cost that it impacts, as far as, hey, the fact that our system is not being attacked or being compromised. And by the way, I have 2,000 or 2 million social security numbers in this system. If it was breached, this would be the overall impact of that. Here's how implementing zero trust reduces that risk, so on and so forth. Having those conversations with them. And so we have implemented at AWS, we've implemented what's called a zero trust for government. And this is actually being leveraged in the federal agencies right now. And it's how we think about zero trust and how zero trust can be implemented across your organizations. And it's not just, just because I'm standing up here representing AWS, it's not about just AWS. It's about the whole ecosystem. And you'll see in a future slide how that ecosystem plays well together from an interoperability perspective, from an automation perspective, to help you to achieve your risk reduction within your environment. But we think about it as, first, you have to have, you have to do that assessment. And we actually have a no cost, it's actually open source, zero trust assessment that you can do to see, baseline your environment. Where am I at? Where those gaps are within my environment? What should I be thinking about next? And I have some slides that talk to that as well. And then it talks about, how to integrate with those solutions that you probably currently have within your environment. What does that architecture look like? And then obviously who can help to implement it if you need to implement it at scale. And so the zero trust maturity assessment that we have really goes through all of the phases and the pillars of the zero trust. So network, identity, devices, all of those things. I think there's 5 or 6 core areas of zero trust that it encompasses. And we can help you do that as well. Well, Chris can help you do that if you're interested in getting guided through it, or you can do it yourself. This is what it looks like. These are some of the screenshots of what the assessment looks like, and where it's going to help you identify and baseline from an identity perspective, devices, like I mentioned, network, applications, data, where you are, where the gaps are, and where you need to be focused on moving forward. And I think this is a key area. One of the things when I talk to customers about the security program, my first question always is, when's the last time you did an assessment? And I'm not talking about when's the last time you did a pen test, because that was so 2000 and late, that's a long time ago. Nobody does just pen testing anymore. And we all know most organizations do a once-a-year pen test, and they call it checking the box. We did our assessment for the year. No, I'm talking about something holistically. Pen testing is just one data point that you're going to get. You know, your scanning of your network is just one data point you're going to get. How do you know holistically across your environment that, you know, you're able to identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover from a process perspective, from, you know, from your resources that you have, the people that you have, are they trained? Do they even have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do what you expect them to do on a day-to-day basis? How mature is your organization? And so the zero trust assessment actually walks you through that and gets you to understand, where do you sit? So now we have a framework. Here's something to consider for your organization. Here's a way to assess how close you are to meeting those objectives. And what are your next steps to go from there? And the outcome of this assessment is obviously, you know, you get a documented baseline that you understand your gaps, like I mentioned before. You get a roadmap. What's next? Where do I need to go? What do I need to implement within my organization? How do I implement it? The next step, and then of course iterate, because it's never one and done. It's always a optimization effort, because the threats change, so you have to change. Your systems have to change. You have to adapt to the threats, because remember what I said earlier, every time that we come up with a way to block and to defend our networks, the bad guys, the bad actors, they come up with another way to go around it. And the easy target is what? It's us, really. It's us and our identities. And it's how we protect our environment or don't protect our environment. Most organizations today probably have one guy that has the root key to everything. See a head nodding here. Yeah, and you know, I have a horror story, true story. And this impacted an AWS environment in a state where there was one gentleman that had access to the entire AWS environment, all the root keys to multiple agencies. And guess what? He was under investigation by the feds for child pornography, unfortunately. And so the question was, how do I get that root key back and not alert him? And, you know, so you really have to think about your environment right now, whether you're all on-prem or you're in the cloud or wherever your data sits, who has access to it? What's your backup strategy? You know, what happens if that person gets hit by a bus or wins the lottery? You know, what's your succession planning? How do you protect that, you know, and how do you also make sure that there's governance over those people that have access to that environment? Are you using a PAM, which is another way that you could reduce the risk of just having one person having keys for everything? You could have a just-in-time access, where they only get access when they need it for just the amount of time that they need, and you log that interaction. These types of things, these are best practices that have been in place for years, but very few organizations take advantage of it. And so when we think about zero trust, we have to think about, where do we put the protection points, right? How do we know when an actor, good or bad, has access to a device? Do they have the right access? Should they have the right access? These are the enforcement points when you think about zero trust. Where do I put these guards? Do the device have access to the network or the internet? Do I put an enforcement point right there so we know we have to interrogate that communication? Doesn't matter whether it's a human to machine, whatever it is. API calls, all of that should be interrogated and should be trusted and validated as part of your zero trust journey. From the network to the apps, where are those points? Where does it make sense within your environment to put those data points? And that's why when I tell you that it is case by case, use case determined, if you will, when you implement zero trust. You can try to boil the ocean, but you're going to have data, you're going to have systems and applications that you don't really care about within your environment. And what I mean by you don't care about, they're low risk. They don't have sensitive data. They don't have, are you going to spend the money, time, and resources to protect that? That's probably phase 3, right? Let's talk about where your critical data sits. Those things should be the first thing the first thing on your list when you're thinking about implementing zero trust. And then again, how do you automate? How do you know who's talking to what at any given time, that it's approved? How do you get that into your whole cycle, your zero trust cycle? So you understand any change that happens within that environment, any communication that happens within that environment, it's thumbs up or thumbs down. And then what's next? How do I automate if something malicious happens? Do I block them? Do I segment off the network. What is the next step? And those can all be implemented through some of the tools that you probably already have within your environment. So again, this is a notional architecture. Someone's coming into your environment. Is this user authorized to access this app? Yes or no? What level of access does that person have? Can they read? Can they write? Can they, what is that? That's the granular level of controls that need to be put within your environment. Is this user authorized to see this tab? You can go to that ninth degree of permission sets. It doesn't have to be, I'm giving them access to this whole document. They have to have access to the whole database. It could be just one field that they need to have access to. Give them that level of access. One of the things when I first heard about zero trust, I thought to myself, well, that's like least privilege, right? But if you're familiar with that old term, least privilege, where you get access just to what you need in order to do your job. But I call this least privilege on steroids because it takes it a different level. It's a different level of it. And again, this is again using an AWS type model. So take that for what it's worth. Is the front end authorized to call the service on behalf of the user? Machine to machine, or is that API call, is that legit? What type of authentication are you using? Is the backend authorized to access the device data store? Again, communication. You have to know. You have to know what communication is happening at any given time. Is it a valid communication? Should it happen? And is it logged? So you can go back and also refer back to it to say, wait a minute, why is server X talking to server, Y? Did we authorize that? Is that what's supposed to happen? What kind of data exchange through that? Because when a bad guy comes into your environment, they're gonna get access. Once they get access to, areas within your environment, that root, they compromise your sysadmin guy, all of this, and that sysadmin guy has access to all of this, your data is gone. But if you are able to implement, maybe your sysadmin guy doesn't have to have access to that one particular database. He can maybe do certain things, maybe protect the infrastructure, but not necessarily actually have access to the data. You have to limit those.
You have to ask permission for anything online.
See, you are hard on that. Yeah, that's good, and that's a mindset that you should have. Now, but you do have to facilitate the business, of course, because there is a push and pull there. Yeah. Is this user authorized to see all of these records? Like I said before, do they need to have access to the entire database, or maybe it's just a column, maybe it's just a field, whatever it is. Have those granular level controls put in place. And there's tools that are out there that can do that for you, that can help to reduce that risk and give you that granular level of protection. And you don't necessarily have to be, I hate to use this word, but a Nazi about it, but I think when everyone understands what the overall goal is, I think they'll get that, because back in the day, more access meant you are the man, right? I've got access to everything. I've got the keys to the empire. This is my environment. But more access today means more risk. And that's how you should be looking at it. So if you're the one that's the holder of, all the keys, guess what? You're the high risk person within that environment. And if and when they compromise your access, guess what? They can take down the whole network. And that's something that you need to be cognizant of. And what other information can you use to inform access policies? Again, that all ties back. Capture all of this. What communication is happening, human to human, human to machine, machine to machine, all of that. And then what that iterative process is, how can I make this better? Is there a gap within my environment? And this is the architecture that I was telling you about. This is actually in use in the federal government right now. We've partnered with these, and most organizations are using them. You have a SIM tool. Most organizations have a SIM. It doesn't have to be Splunk. It could be Elastic. It could be, one of the other ones that are out there. And actually, a lot of the security companies out there are integrating SIMs into their solutions too, like MDRs. I know CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, they all have a SIM baked in. So you have a SIM. You have something that gives you visibility to your cloud environment that helps to protect that. You have the AWS, obviously, from an infrastructure perspective. You have CrowdStrike that's giving you the threat intelligence feeds. You have Okta that's managing the identities within that environment. And all of them operate interactively and interoperably to give you the information of where there are threats happening within that environment, and it's automated. So we actually have this working right now, and this is part of what we call the Zero Trust for Government model. And so getting started, where do you start? As I mentioned before, do the assessment. Do the assessment, see where you're at, see where your baseline's at, see where your gaps are, and then go, what's next? Let me build a roadmap with you and help you to get to where you want to go. And so that's what this is really speaking to. I'll go from there, and I know we're running out of time. So any other questions, thoughts? Sir?
Quick question. Well, but, so I teach here at State, and the very first semester I get students that teach information technology foundations, and I teach policy of least privilege. But then the next semester, I teach them zero trust environments, because I always thought it was a progression. Am I wrong about that thought? Do you think?
No, I love that.
Zero trust is a replacement for policy of least privilege, or are they two separate ideas?
Honestly, I think they're overlays. I think zero trust is going to capture a little bit more and more granular level, because I think it's the natural maturity of the whole mindset, the role-based access, the least privilege, all of that we learned back in the day, RBAC and all that. I think zero trust is more iterative and allows you to take into consideration the different environments that you might have as well. So I think you're not off in doing that. I think it's like you said, you're ramping up. You're teaching them what least privilege is, so they understand the old concept of how we used to do things. But here is how zero trust overlays onto that and makes it even stronger. So,
I've heard people air gapping servers, and I was really curious, is that reasonable, or kind of, would it make sense for me to do it, or is it just not entirely necessary?
So I think that's, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's a use case requirement. Like, for example, election systems. There is part of the election systems that's air-gapped, right? And there's a reason why it's air-gapped. And that's to help to protect the integrity and so on and so forth. So I think it depends on certain environments that it makes sense to air-gap. Top secret environments, they have air-gap systems back then. When I was in DoD, we tried to do, well, they're still doing it, but where you have these cross-domain solutions that sit between, that allows you to go from low to high, but they will stop it from going high to low as far as data transfer. But it comes down to configurations. Sometimes somebody misconfigures something and something goes wrong, and so you always have to take that into consideration as a risk. So to answer your question, it depends on how it's your risk mitigation, how you think about managing that risk, and how critical you think that data is, and if you did a threat modeling, what's the potential of it being compromised if you did connect it. So, because there's always a risk when you connect anything to the internet, because again, it leaves it open to misconfigurations that can then lead to somebody getting in and so on and so forth. So I'm happy to talk to you afterwards to understand more about your system in particular that you're talking to and why.
I was more curious because like having a specific computer for, like you said before, a computer for like password manager that just completely disconnects from everything. That was just a thought I had. Not sure.
Again, it's really up to you and your risk tolerance. I hate to say that, but it really is. And going back to password managers, it's like talking to seniors. I had a session where I was talking to seniors about managing passwords. Back in the day, remember, we used to frown on people writing their passwords down on a piece of paper, right? But for a senior that doesn't go anywhere and doesn't even have external people coming into their house to clean or whatever, what's the risk of them writing it down? It's probably better for them to write it down and put it on a computer, right? Because the chances of them getting compromised. So again, it's a risk decision. Any other thoughts, questions? If not, I do want to say, again, we have Chris here, wonderful solutions architect. He can architect his way around all of AWS. So if you have any specific questions around the environment, I try to stay away from that. But if you want to talk about strategy, that's where I am a resource. Please feel free to reach out to me. You have my contact information. And while Gene and I were talking about it, while it doesn't make sense, that is accurate. It's THAM, not THOM. So please feel free to contact me, and thank you very much for your time.
So I enjoyed your demonstration and your workflow for Zero Trust Principles. And I enjoyed the improvise, adapt, and overcome, right? You have to, in that cycle, it's iterative, right? Every time you review that next phase, before you go on with what you had planned a year ago, you have to revisit it and make sure that plan still holds water today.
And that's something that I think we do often enough.
Yeah,
We don't
technology
revisit it.
changes, right? Yeah, the second it's on paper, it's out of date, right?
Sadly.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that walkthrough on Zero Trust. It was great iteration and visual display. I think I saw everybody here in the room today just eyes on glass, so that was great. They weren't on the phones, they were looking at you and participating with you, so it's obviously attractive to them, the information you shared. Some of the challenges I've seen is there's so many frameworks and guides, about air gapping, right? There are regulations that require air gapping, like the election systems, like IoT with energy, right? NSA just released the guidelines around the Zero Trust Principles. They're doing it in phases as well, as you suggested, right? They have 5 phases. Phase 0 is out, but they're releasing phase 1 and phase 2 publicly. Phase 3 and 4, you have to actually write to them and request access to, because it's a maturity cycle. But I appreciate you sharing all this with us today and those models. It's phenomenal. It helps you understand when you see the pictures. I'm a visual learner myself. So thank you. Any questions for today in general? Okay, so the next thing we have, that's it for today for speakers. The next thing we have going on here, February 3rd, 5 o'clock, we have our security meetup. That is very informal. There'll be 3 lightning talks. We'll talk about the Tailscale VPN services. We'll talk about containerization, and we'll talk about using AI and vulnerability management detection. And then it's, social networking and whatnot. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves, hang out for a little bit, get to know each other and what you're all about. If you have any questions on anything, today's got a great attendance with a great audience and experts in the room. I myself lean on Chris, so feel free to ask away. Thank you. If anybody wants to register for the meetup, I'll put the QR code back on the screen for that. Yeah. I feel you. I've been out here for 3 times. But at least you've got to go to some area.